Cloud computing has done is made it easier to deliver services quickly, which is great for customers. But also, it's made IT a commodity, which means you need to continue adding value as a cloud provider and a cloud service. And that's definitely something we reflect on with Oracle.
Welcome to The Adaptive Organisation, an audio series about why today's businesses must transform at speed to withstand uncertainty. It's no secret that customer expectations are changing faster than ever before. It's a factor that increasingly sets the pace and scale of technology transformations. So how can transformation enable today's businesses to cater to the shifting needs of their customers? And what role can cloud technologies play in creating more adaptable organizations? I'm Megan Wright, Senior Editor at Longitude, a Financial Times company, and joining me to answer these questions is Jason Rees, Head of Technology Cloud Engineering for Western Europe at Oracle. Having optimized the way we work through technology, Jason says companies should now set their sights firmly on crafting the best experience possible for their customers and clients, as well as their employees.
What we've seen a lot, obviously, in the last year is the need for enterprises to look at not just how their workforces are working, but actually how they're making use of technology to make it easier for their employees to work, but also make it easy for their customers and clients to interact and consume their own products and services that they're offering to the market.
When it comes to being adaptable and when it comes to withstanding uncertainty, there's probably no better place that we could start this conversation than to look back at the events of the past 12 to 18 months and the impact that the pandemic and some of this ongoing economic, geopolitical, and even social upheaval has had on businesses. What trends have you seen come to the fore? I guess particularly I'm talking there around cloud adoption rates and how technology has enabled businesses to actually adapt in order to survive this time.
Absolutely. Well, Meg, the first thing we'd say is, did any of us think we'd be sitting in front of Google Meet, Zoom, Teams as much as we did? So, the first piece is technology has kept us talking together. And I think that was a really interesting thing, a year ago when we all said, we'll have to do this for a couple of months. And it seemed quite almost entertaining in the first piece. It's interesting as a technology company and as a sort of IT professional, the use of technology to do my day job hasn't changed. And I get asked, how's the last year been from a work point of view? And I'll be honest, I don't think it's changed a lot how we have had to interact. Clearly, our conversations are different. But what we've also seen when we're talking to our customers is people who have maybe in the past thought technology and IT is still just a supporting function. They've now realized it's absolutely business critical to everything they do. And what that meant was all these people who were naysayers that said, we can't work remotely and, technology just is a supporting function. I found they've actually turned around and said, it's absolutely business critical. Again, the ability to have that adaptability. What that means is the ability to ensure that there's high availability, disaster recovery of those systems, as well as scale and performance, has moved that particular point, I feel, right up to the board level, and certainly a huge investment requirement to make sure that those IT systems are available through these crises and beyond.
It's no secret that customer expectations really are changing faster than ever before, as you've just alluded to. In fact, Fujitsu's recent research into organizational adaptability found that 41% of business and IT leaders say their customers' needs are changing rapidly within weeks at a time. So with that in mind, how do you think organizations can overcome this challenge to better serve their customers at the pace and scale that they need?
Understanding a customer's requirement is more than just understanding the technology that they wish to use. What we're finding is more and more customers are not looking for us to provide technology, they're looking for us to provide an outcome. So it's a true partnership. And I think what that means in that partnership is because of that demand for, customer satisfaction and the agility that we're talking about, it needs us all to understand and speak in those business languages and actually use technology as an enabler for that technology. You only have to look at things like machine learning or artificial intelligence, they're great concepts, but actually throwing machine learning at a problem and not knowing what the outcome is a pointless activity. But in the end, it's data that's actually what we're trying to use to make better business decisions using technology. So I think that's the only way we can really increase that satisfaction as a provider, but making sure that our end customers are able to increase the satisfaction of their end customers as well.
So how are companies tapping into data with the help of things like cloud technology? And I guess to that point as well, I'm interested in how centralizing data can actually enable organizations to unlock the kind of adaptability and agility that we're really talking about here.
Data, is it data? It's probably more information, isn't it? But data, because cloud technology is providing storage, for example, at such low cost, what that means is we can hold on to data for a lot longer than we ever have before. If you looked at on-premise world, you had to get rid of some data because, quite frankly, you couldn't afford to keep it. But these days with cloud computing, you can archive that data, you can have very fast access to that data. But data, just for the sake of it, doesn't give you anything. So the ability to actually ensure you're exploiting the data and therefore getting the value out of the data is important. But what we find is actually there's enough supply of data, is actually the cost comes from moving data around and the management of that. If you look at Oracle, for example, with our SaaS-based solutions, all of those applications are generating a lot of data. And that may be that you're able to see, your finance systems. You'll be able to see what purchase orders are outstanding. You'll be able to see from a CX point of view, again, what's the best next action. And those cloud technologies have given you access to getting that data. But we still find data sits in silos. So if you've got an application from Oracle and maybe you've got Salesforce or you've got Workday or you've created your other application, the danger is you've got silos of activity. And yes, you can centralize it. And I think it's still a good approach to try to centralize that. But we talk about data gravity, because what you don't want to do is centralize it by moving it around different cloud sort of computing offerings, or potentially moving it back and forth to your on-premise systems as well. So yes, by all means, centralize and make sure that you've got the full data set you're looking at. But we feel also you should consider that data gravity to make sure that you're not spending all your time moving the data around to get your insights, where it may be that it's just as easy to say, I have Oracle ERP, for example, let's actually get the data at source and at real time and make the business decisions as quickly as possible. Again, centralization is good and definitely like it, but the danger is you can build complexity into doing that as well as maybe, the security concerns about having everything in one place. So it's a balance for me. Do things centrally, but also look to do things locally at source as you can as well.
We know from our research that there is a really strong correlation between the ability to meet customer expectations and selecting the right technology. In fact, Fujitsu's research actually showed that about 3/4 of business leaders say that meeting customer needs is the driving force behind their cloud strategy. I'm wondering how, if at all, you think that this particular relationship or correlation has changed since the onset of the COVID crisis, or do you think the crisis has simply served to perhaps reinforce a relationship that was already there?
It used to be, to do all these complex IT projects, there was a huge investment required. And these projects took a long time. Rolling out a ERP solution would take you, 3 years. I was only doing some work a few weeks ago with a customer where we fired up a virtual cloud network, and we did, 30 seconds it took to do it. And the customer had reflected on that would take 3 months, to buy the kit, install it, get it configured. It would take 3 months to create a network. And I suppose what cloud computing has done is allowed us very quickly to provide these IT systems and services to the end customer. What cloud computing has done is made it easier to deliver services quickly, which is great for customers. But also, it's made IT a commodity, which means you need to continue adding value as a cloud provider and a cloud service. And that's definitely something we reflect on with Oracle. And to your question on COVID, I think what has actually happened is, going back to my sort of first answer, organizations realize that their digital transformation has to accelerate. And what that means is cloud computing is clearly the best way to get access to technology quickly. It can reduce the complexities and the fact that you're not having to have IT departments buying things and installing them in data centers and things like that. So I think what's actually ended up happening is cloud computing has just become the default for customers to make those digital transformations. Yes, they'll continue to do things on-prem, and absolutely they should do. But what they're realizing is that let's get started is easier to do in cloud computing.
What are some of the risks that companies need to consider in making that decision to move at speed?
My personal view is the low-hanging fruit is all gone. So, being able to take development systems or look at systems that could be re-architected, a lot of that has been done. And what's happened in the last year is all those systems that sat in their data centers and they know they need to do something about, that's accelerated it. So the risk, of course, is you keep kicking the can down the road, because we're talking now about complex mission-critical systems that can't easily be refactored. Or if you are going to refactor them, at a huge cost, and obviously cost being a risk there as well, and the complexity. So I think the risk actually, Meg, is that we don't react. So customers continue to say, we'll get to that application at some point. And that application may be the mission critical system that has actually kept them going through this crisis.
I guess it brings me nicely to my final question, because a lot of this is easier said than done, especially if we're talking to businesses that have legacy technology infrastructure or that may be struggling to get stakeholder buy-in for some of these kinds of investments and transformations. Where should companies begin? What kind of advice would you give to a company that's staring down the barrel of this huge transformation plan, but just doesn't know where to start?
I think actually my first piece of advice is don't look at it as one thing, one major transformation, because immediately it looks daunting. I think it's about getting started. But one of the things I say a lot to customers is something that seems like legacy is only legacy if there's no upgrade path. A lot of the time, there is an upgrade path. There's an ability to upgrade a database to the newer version or an application to a newer version. So make sure you're talking to your technology partners to see which programs they have in place to invest in you, to move it onto a new modern cloud platform with a modern operating model. And just make sure that you build the business case, not just around the cost of the data center, the servers and storage and heating and cooling of the data center, but really understand the total cost of ownership around those systems, because I think that sometimes is missed out. It's seen as, it's just, I'm going to turn a few servers off. Well, actually, going right back to your top of this conversation, what would delighting a customer look like? What additional value could you get by actually having improved performance of that system, improved capabilities, functionality of that system that could actually delight your customer and, quite frankly, add to your bottom line as well?
A really good point, and I think a fantastic note to end on. Jason, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
This interview is part of Fujitsu's campaign on organizational adaptability. It is produced by Longitude, a Financial Times company, in partnership with Fujitsu. Thanks for listening.